So I was talking to the president and the CEO of a $45 million manufacturing company, and we were talking about why his sales team wasn't performing the way he wanted them to perform. And we were talking about all the possible reasons and some of the things that he could do. And we talked about, building better KPIs, and we talked about doing funnel reviews more effectively. And I said, you could be their biggest cheerleader. And he looked at me and he said, Liz, I pay them. Isn't that enough? How many of you feel like, I pay them? Isn't that enough? The answer is no, it's not enough, and here's why. Gartner did a survey of salespeople across the United States. 90% of salespeople are burned out. That's all of them. All of them are burned out. And here's the scary part. 70% of them are looking for new jobs. So no, paying them is not enough. When we asked salespeople why they were burned out, why were they frustrated, they talked about something we call drag. And drag are those things that get in the way of a salesperson doing their job. I mean, selling. There are things that get in the way of selling. So what are those? Those are things like way too much admin work, too many meetings, too many papers to fill out and authorizations to get. They talked about technology that doesn't work, having to be in too many different tools to get their job done, or having tools that just simply don't work the way they should work. I had one company, I'm not kidding you, they would be filling in the CRM, the system would refresh, and everything would disappear, right? And the final thing is roadblocks. Roadblocks. I need an engineer to answer some questions so I can get back to my salesperson. I need legal to approve this so we can get this deal sold. I need the COO to say, yes, they can actually do that. I need accounting to say, yes, we're willing to accept them as a customer. When these things take time and they have to wait weeks and weeks, this interferes with their ability to sell. It's sales prevention. And I wonder, if you think about your company, how many of you have a sales prevention department? Oh, a couple of you do. We don't want drag. We don't want drag. And the interesting thing is, if we're thinking about this, if you're hiring salespeople, this is a very round number, the kind of average $200,000 investment. And that is, if you have a pretty low-level salesperson, but you still have computers and training and travel and all of the other things that are going to support that person. So this is a really big investment. And if you want to get the most out of that investment, you're going to have to really think about how you're going to do that. What we know right now in the United States, according to Gartner, and some of the statistics actually come out worse than this, 60% of salespeople will not hit their goal. 60%. So what does that really look like? Well, of that 60% that don't hit their sales goal, half of them are at less than 50% of goal. So it kind of looks like this. You've got a third of your team that's less than 50% of goal. You've got a third of your team that's that's somewhere between 50% and not quite 100%. You've got 30% that are hitting goal and 8% that are exceeding goal. That's a lot of investment for not hitting goal. And here's the part that makes it even worse. The average salesperson stays in a job for 3 years, and turnover is about 30%. That means every single year you're recreating a third of your team. So what that tells us is that compensation is important, but it's not enough. It's just simply not enough. So in the time that we have together, I want to talk to you about how to hire, inspire, and retain a winning sales team. You guys ready for that? Yeah? How many of you are in a sales position, in a sales role? Or want to be in a sales role, all of you in the back? Hands up. How many of you that are not currently in a sales role have been in a sales role in the past? Excellent. How many of you have never done anything vaguely resembling sales? Oh, good. Good. So you all know what it's like. I don't have to tell you this. Sales is hard. Sales is really hard. And now, that's not to say that salespeople don't love their job. Salespeople that I talk to love sales. They may be burnt out in the position they're in, but they love sales, despite the fact that 90% of the work that they do in prospecting will come to nothing. 90% of what they do in prospecting comes to absolutely nothing, because you have to have a lot of conversations if you're going to close enough deals. And depending upon your industry, somewhere between 50 and 80% of proposals are rejected. And I'm using that word on purpose, rejected, because if you're the salesperson, how do you feel when they don't accept your proposal? Rejected. Right? And even those sure thing deals, the ones they're positive, we got the verbal, this is going to happen, they still fall through. Because this is the life of a salesperson. And if you've been in sales, and if you've managed sales, what you know is that weeks, months can be absolutely soul-crushing. So, no, compensation is not enough. Getting the compensation formula right is really important, but it doesn't do your job for you. Because $200,000 per salesperson is a really big investment, and what I just showed you is the chances of success are really limited. Big investment, bad odds. I live in Nevada, so we have to talk about odds. It's just part of the deal. So how do we make those odds better? There are 3 things that we can do as leaders of companies or sales leaders. And if you're in HR, I don't know how many of you are in HR, listen to this because it's important. You can do 3 things. You can hire the right people. You can set realistic goals, and you can support the team you have to make them successful. Those are the 3 things that will make that investment have better odds, better chances of success. Hiring and inspiring. How many of you have hired the wrong salesperson? Right? How many of you have been a salesperson hired in the wrong position? Right? That's not fun. It's not fun either way. So we want to hire the right people, and then we want to inspire them to be successful. So I want to talk to you a little bit. We've had this conversation several times today. I want to frame it a little differently. There are different kinds of sales work, and these things are distinctly different. So we have the folks that do lead generation. Sometimes we call them sales development reps, SDRs, or business development reps, BDRs. It doesn't matter what you call them. They're the ones that are out there looking for new business all the time. And then we have like account executives, and these are the ones that are working on business-to-business complex sales, meaning it's a long sales cycle, there's a lot of people involved in the decision-making, and it takes a lot of work and a long time. Those we typically call sales executives or something like that, but they're kind of in that middle of the process. They may do some prospecting, but really their job is to take this complex sale from start to end, get it closed, and maybe beyond that. And then we might have what we call inside sales reps sometimes. Those are people who take orders. They're on the phone all day long. Sometimes it's inside sales does outbound, but mostly it's people calling who want something, and it's their job to make it happen and happen quickly. We've talked about those three, kind of. We haven't talked about channel sales. How many of you have a channel sale? Meaning you sell through another organization. Channel sales and sales are two totally different animals. There is nothing similar about those two jobs. And the last one is key account or strategic account growth. That is growing the important accounts that we already have. Can you see how this job of business development rep all the way over to channel sales and key account growth, these are really, really different jobs. So as you're looking for this sales rep, you want to make sure that you are describing the job you actually have. When we look at sales descriptions of sales jobs, what we tend to see is I want someone who can do everything and do it well and be an expert at all of these things and be prepared to do it all tomorrow. That, my friends, is a unicorn. And I don't know about you, I have a 30-year-old who used to be 3, and we went on a lot of unicorn hunts. Haven't found one yet. How about you? Right? We don't have unicorns. We have salespeople who are really skilled at certain things. So if you're hiring the wrong person for the job you have, you are not going to be successful. So I want to talk to you a little bit about the 3 different hiring mistakes that we make. And some of these may be really familiar to you. So one is hiring the wrong person for the wrong job, or the job that we have, which we'll talk a little bit more about. The second is believing big stories, right? And the third is not checking references. So in addition to there being a whole bunch of different kinds of sales jobs, positions that we do, there are different sales cultures. And different people function better in different roles or in different environments. So if you have, I was talking to someone who was talking about having a very developed sales organization. He's in sales ops, they have sales enablement, they have a really mature marketing machine that delivers leads. They also have very strict guide rails and rules and ways that you have to do things and things you're allowed to say and not allowed to say. Many organizations don't have the kind of resources required to develop that kind of a team. So you more likely have a smaller team. Maybe you have 2 or 4 or 8 or 10 or 15 people in your sales organization, and it's not super structured. There aren't a lot of guide rails, and they're kind of on their own. Go sell. Some people love that environment. Don't hire somebody from Pella or Vermeer or John Deere and say, come work at my manufacturing company. There'll be 2 of you. You're on your own. It's not likely to work. I was doing an interview one time with this gentleman who insisted, I don't remember what company he worked for, but it was a big corporation with tons of sales support, and he said, oh, they don't give us much support at all. And I'm thinking, oh, let me introduce you to not much support at all. Right? So we want to understand, what is our sales culture? What is our sales team going to get? And what is the right person for that environment? So the next thing is this whole idea that good talkers are great sellers. Oh man, I was doing an interview, and the COO was listening to me do this interview, and he's like, Liz, stop. Why are you asking all these questions about how he gets leads and how he qualifies and how does he do follow-up and what does he do before and during and after a trade show? And I said, well, these things are important. He goes, listen to this guy. He's great. He sold me. He'll kill it. How many of you have hired those guys? How well did they succeed? Because big talkers are not good sellers. Good sellers listen and ask questions and do due diligence and try to solve problems and build relationships. And they have process and systems to what they do. They do the same thing. They know what works. They don't go in unprepared and winging it, telling great stories. So don't hire that person that can't tell you how they did it. And I want to ask you another question, just while we're thinking about this in big stories. Have you ever interviewed someone who did not exceed quota the last 3 years in a row? Really? Because 90%, probably 100% of salespeople will tell you they exceeded quota the last 3 years running. Let's go back to our statistics. 60% of salespeople did not hit goal. 8% exceeded goal. How come everybody you interview exceeded goal? I'm not a mathematician, but I don't think it's statistically possible. So don't believe the big stories. You don't need a storyteller. You need somebody who knows how to do their job, do it well, do it consistently. So I'm way ahead of myself. Finally, check references. We want to check references. It seems silly, right? Because obviously the people that they gave me as references are going to only say good things. You wouldn't give somebody a name if they weren't going to say great things about you. So why bother? I was working with a CEO of a company that has a technology, it's too hard to explain, but he had hired a sales rep and he was really unhappy with the sales rep that he hired. And then he went back and checked the references. And he said, I would not have hired him if I had checked his references. And so while they may not say bad things about the person, they may help you understand the position that person had before, the environment that they sold in, and what their job actually was. So you can make a better decision about whether that person will really fit in the environment that you have. Okay, so the second thing, so let's go back to my first thing. So we want to hire the right people for the job that we have, and then I said we want to set realistic goals. I don't know about you, but here's what I usually hear when companies start talking about setting goals. We are going to increase 10% over last year. Or the investor said we need a 20% increase in sales. This is what is often referred to as a WAG, a wild guess. That is no way to set goals. We talked earlier about how salespeople, if they don't feel like they can achieve the goal, they're defeated before they start. Don't guess. We want to make sure that we've thought about what goes into the decision that we're making. When I believe this is a McKinsey statistic saying 50% of sales leaders are not confident they will be able to hit the forecast. If 50% of the sales leaders aren't confident, how confident can you be as a leader? How do you feel as a seller? We want to be confident. Here's another really scary statistic. 80% of American companies could not predict revenue within a 25% accuracy. 80%. You know what that looks like? If I have a $40 million company, I don't know if I'm going to hit 50 million or 30 million. How do you run a company like that? So what do we do? How do we improve this? So before you start your plan, before you start throwing numbers out, let's get a good look at what's happening around us. So you want to look at the sales landscape. You want to do the math, and we're going to do sales math in a minute. And you want to set a strategy. What are the reasons that sales forecasts are so far off? We don't have the right people doing the job. We don't understand what it will take to do that, so we don't have adequate systems in place, and we have set unrealistic goals. So I'm sitting here pacing back and forth with you guys. I'll stop making you dizzy. What I want you to do right now is I want you to stop guessing and start growing. You cannot grow if you're guessing. You might grow, you might not grow. You just don't know. So what you want to do is get a really good plan in place. And a really good plan starts by understanding things like the economic situation, legislation that might impact your business. If the economy is down, depending on what you sell, your sales are going to be down or they're going to be up. Who knew in the pandemic that Zoom would become a unicorn? So you have to understand the situation that you're selling in. It's really important to understand the industry trends, and that's not just your industry trends, that's your customers' industry trends. And we were talking about AI earlier. Thank goodness we can just ask AI right now what the industry trends are. But you have to build them into your plan. We need you to also think about technology. What technology are my customers using? What technology am I using? What technology are my competitors using? And how are we using technology? And how will that impact our results? And then the final piece is competition. We'd all like to believe that we have no competitors, but the fact of the matter is we do. And if you have competitors, you need to know, are the competitors, do they have new products? Are they getting a bigger share of the marketplace? Are they winning more of the deals? Are they using technology that we're not using? What sector are they going after? We need to know so we can build a plan. And a plan has to be based on what I call sales math. And this, another way to put this is the triangle that we were talking about earlier today. There's a certain amount of work required to achieve a goal. And this is sort of a standard number. Like if you bought Salesforce and you looked at the statistics, this is what they would tell you. That out of the prospects, you're likely to maybe close, out of 10 prospects, you're maybe going to close 1. So if that's true, then it's really important to understand what does this sales math look like, and what does it actually take to close 1 deal? So I have to have 10 conversations with people who are reasonably potential opportunities. I have to then qualify out. And as I'm qualifying out, I'm losing some of those. And then we're going to create a proposal. And remember, I said 50 to 80% of those are going to be rejected. Or they're going to come, we're not going to do it now, we're going to do it later. And then you have some that say, yes, yes, verbal approval, and they still fall through. So if this is the sales math, it's really important that you understand it. You understand what's the ratio of leads to close, and what are the ratios along the way? How do I track progress? And if my sales process is 6, 9, 12, 18 months, or 2 years, or 3 years, I was talking to somebody earlier who said that their sales process could be 5 years. Right? So if that's true, then you need to know the sales math so you can figure out what does my funnel need to look like 6 months from now, or 9 months from now, 12 months from now. If I'm only looking at the bottom, what's closing this week, this month, this quarter, have you had that conversation? This week, this month, this quarter, this week, this month, this quarter, what's happening? That's all I hear. But that doesn't tell you what's going to happen in 9 months or 12 months or a year. You have to know this math, and you have to know how long your sales cycle is and what's involved so you can actually track progress toward your goal and know before it's desperate whether or not you're going to hit your goals and what you need to do about it. I'm going to say this, a number is not a strategy. Just because you gave them a quota, that is not a strategy. A strategy needs to incorporate all of the pieces that are going to make the salesperson successful. And remember, I'm going to harp on this, 60% of salespeople are not performing. We need a strategy that helps them perform and helps them be successful. Why are 60% of salespeople not performing effectively? They may not have the skill set to do the job that you have. They may have a skill set to do a different job, but they don't have the skill set you need them to have. They may not have the tool set they need. Do you have the right messaging? Do you have the right CRM? Do you have a way for them to get signatures and contracts? What tools do they need? And the third one, and the most important one, is do they have your support? Are you the sales prevention department, or are you their biggest cheerleader? What role are you playing? So we want to think about how do we keep the salespeople we have, and how do we make them successful? We already know that when interviewed, 70% of people said they quit their last job because they had a bad manager. Now, that may be their direct manager, it may be the VP of sales, it may be the COO or the CEO of the company. But whoever it is, if they're busy preventing sales, then you're a bad manager, or at least you're a bad sales manager. So how do you become a good sales manager? We make sure that our team is successful, and they will believe they're successful when they have the support they need to do their job and they're getting the compensation they need to be happy, to survive. If they're not getting the support they need, even if you have a great compensation package and they have a tremendous opportunity to earn, they won't be hitting their goals, so they won't be earning at the rate that they were hoping to earn. They will leave. You may want them to leave. Okay, so what do you need to do? You have 3 jobs: educate, track, and coach. Sorry, let me back up. You want to educate them on your product. You want to educate them on your company. You want to educate them on the industry. You want to educate them on the companies that you sell to. What is their industry? What are their trends? You want to make sure they've had a sales education. Guess what? We don't just pop out knowing how to do sales. I know everybody says, oh, that person is a born salesperson. That person is a born talker, not a born salesperson. So we want to make sure that we educate them, give them the skills that they need to be successful. We want to track their progress. So we were just talking about understanding the sales math and what's involved. Well, somehow we need to track progress. So how many of you have key performance indicators set up in your company? Okay, so we're all functioning either as the one managing those or living by those key performance indicators. How many of you have key performance indicators that are tied to the sales math, or what I call your sales funnel? Excellent. So a lot of times we say a salesperson must make this many phone calls or have this many conversations. That's the number I care about. Have conversations, hit your goals, we'll be happy. There's a whole bunch in the middle between have a conversation and hit your goals. And what we want to do is use that sales math and that funnel to make sure we're tracking toward our goals and to identify quickly if someone is not going to hit goal. I can look at your funnel. I can look at the CRM and the CRM reports and say really quickly, hey, 6 months from now, we're going to be in trouble. And what happens is nobody's making sure that enough is going in the top of the funnel to keep stuff coming out the bottom of the funnel. And it's not just that you've got to have those early conversations. You have to know that you're going to filter some stuff out. It's just natural. I have an idea. I think I want to buy something. Oh, geez, I didn't know it was that expensive. I don't want to buy it. This is a natural process that your prospects go through. So we need to be able to track it and support our salespeople. And then the last one is that you are able to really coach and support your salespeople. So again, the statistics, and I could go from Gartner to Salesforce to McKinsey, it doesn't matter. Somewhere between 30 and 70% of a sales leader's job is coaching their sales team. As salespeople, how many of you are getting that much sales support and coaching? Yeah. He is. We have. He's got to say yes. But the way our businesses are structured, it's really hard. And if you're the CEO, also managing sales, how are you going to spend 70% of your time managing your sales organization? Yeah, not going to happen. So what can you do? What do you do to be that kind of supportive manager that you need to be, that kind of supportive leader? And it really means making good decisions about how you interact with your team, about what kinds of meetings you have, about what you do in the meetings that you're having. It's about taking separate time to say, hey, you're not hitting your numbers, we have a problem, to another time to say, hey, how do I coach and support you? How are you going to get this account? How am I going to help you do this? Who do we need to bring in to strategize? But what do most sales leaders do? Do you know how most sales leaders spend the majority of their time? Putting out fires. The least productive thing you can possibly do with your day is to put out fires. So how do you prevent fires? How do you prevent these time-sucking monstrosities? You do it by coaching and supporting and being ahead of the problem, understanding what your salespeople really need. Oh, and the last thing is removing obstacles, right? Remember we talked about sales prevention. If you are putting obstacles in your team's way, you need to remove them. So what does that mean? Does that mean every time your sales team complains about something that you say, okay, gosh, you don't have to do that anymore? No, it does not mean that. But what are the things you need your salespeople doing to be productive and effective? What kind of planning and strategizing and thinking and tracking do they need to do to be successful? And what are the things that are getting in the way? Why is it that legal takes 3 weeks to approve a contract? And is that acceptable? These are the things we have control of as leaders. And as salespeople, you don't have control of those things, but you have the opportunity to say, hey, I need some help. So when your boss says, let's have a chat about that, let's strategize, don't sit there and wait for them to tell you what to do. Don't sit there and complain because they're going to spend time with you. What you really want to do is leverage that time as a salesperson to use the experience of the people around you to be successful. And I know you guys are getting tired, so I'm going to reiterate it. Big investment, bad odds. The things that you can do